Part 66. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 652. Yao Bei originally came from a family of young military generals in the interstellar world. When she was a child, Yao Bei practiced interstellar physical skills and showed very good physical fitness at a young age. Several generations of the Yao family have been in the military, and they can be considered to have a moderate position in the army. Official position, in Yao Bei's generation, because her father Yao Qianshan only had her as a daughter. After discovering that her daughter had excellent physical fitness, responsiveness, and was naturally very interested in military life, he sent his younger daughter to the interstellar military children's camp, training from an early age. In the army, Yao Bei was very well suited. She was very good in every aspect. After turning 20, she was selected by the Empire as an elite special soldier and was selected into the Empire's top army, the Shenji Battalion, and became one of the official team members. 100 centuries later, the Earth has long been exhausted of energy after years of consumption. All humans have migrated to alien planets, and they are divided into different countries, large and small. Yao Bei's empire is the United Nations of the galaxy, and each planet the empire encourages soldiers to join the army during successive battles, and the empire's troops are divided into many types, but the Shenji Battalion is the empire's top and most mysterious force. Every soldier here is the elite of the elite. Whether it is physical fitness, mental fitness, or IQ, they must reach a certain level before they can enter. People from any planet in the galaxy will have a headache when they hear about the soldiers of the Imperial Divine Machine Battalion. Come on! Yao Bei is one of the few women in the Shenji Battalion, and because of her perseverance and ability to endure hardships, she has repeatedly made military exploits in several dangerous missions, so she has been promoted to the position at the age of less than 40. A squad leader position in the Shenji Battalion. With the development of human beings to this day, scientists have already found the genetic code that extends human lifespan. The average age of human beings today is about 200 years old. Yao Bei, who is less than 40 years old, is in her youth, calm and rational, if she had not met the nemesis in her life later. Maybe her life will be completely different from that of her ancestors of the Yao family. She may shine in Shenji camp. After all, she is still young and has unlimited potential for future development. If you make more military exploits, you may even move from hiding in the dark to the front desk and be named a general in middle age. When Yao Bei was 37 years old, a man named Lin Yunzhen parachuted in from Shenji camp. This man was originally from the famous Lin family in the empire and was a descendant of political elders. If he followed the footsteps of his father and ancestors, he would have had nothing to do with the military in this life. He should wear a beautiful tuxedo, have his hair combed decently and brightly, be surrounded by flowers and applause, receive all the political resources of the Lin family, step onto the political stage in the future, and even rely on the power of the Lin family to run for the position of president of the empire. But Lin Yunzhen was an outlier in the Lin family. He didn't like clerical work. He liked the life in the army, so he gave up his writing and joined the army. He started as an ordinary soldier at the lowest level, and was finally selected into the Shenji Battalion because of his outstanding performance. At the beginning, all the soldiers in the Shenji camp looked down upon Lin Yunzhen, a young man who looked cold and thin, and they all provoked him. People here worship and respect strength, and those who have the ability will get everyone's favor. Adored, the incompetent person did not even leave here alive. Yao Bei watched with cold eyes at first as Lin Yunzhen was being harassed. A group of outstanding young people from the empire are selected here every year. But only 1 or 2 out of 10 survive every year. She did not stop her men from provoking Lin Yunzhen. She also climbed out step by step in this way. The people of the Shenji Battalion had to perform the most dangerous tasks. If Lin Yun really couldn't adapt here, he would not die at the hands of his compatriots in the future. They will also die at the hands of people from other planetary countries. To Yao Beihi's surprise, Lin Yunzhen not only adapted to this place, but also quickly convinced these people with his powerful force. He looked thin, but in fact, he had practiced a lot of physical skills to a very powerful level, and even developed a breath. After the migration of the Earth, some scientists created a set of physical exercises suitable for all human beings based on human genetic data. In the past few hundred years, a very small number of people have practiced Qi sense. In the end, almost all such people have achieved success. Surprisingly, the news that Lin Yunzhen had mastered Qi sense quickly spread throughout the Shenji camp, and the higher UPS attached great importance to him. After comprehensively testing his strength, he was promoted to the position of squad leader on the same level as Yao Bai. The two are about the same age. In terms of appearance, although post-interstellar human genes have been optimized, there are very few ugly ones and most of them are good-looking. However, Yao Beihi and Lin Yunzhen are different. The two are handsome men and beautiful women, and their appearances match. Moreover, their strength was almost the same, and their status was at the same level. As time passed, someone in the Shenji camp started joking that the two were a couple. In the Shenji camp, people like Lin Yunzhen who were parachuted in and immediately became team captains, no matter how powerful they were, would find it difficult to convince the public. Yao Beihi was different. She had been working here for many years. Regardless of her reputation, strength, and his status was recognized by the soldiers of the Shenji camp. Because of Lin Yunzhen's scandal with Yao Beihi, many people in the Shenji camp who were originally hostile to him gradually began to accept him because of Yao Beihi. He didn't show any resistance to his appointment as squad leader. Lin Yunzhen did not refute such scandals, as if he acquiesced, and seemed not to care at all. Yao Beihi didn't take it seriously at first, but later it was hard to say that he was not touched. When it comes to Yao Beihi, it is very rare to find a man that she can like. Someone who is better than her may not be liked by her, and he may even have a family and a career, but she cannot look down on someone who is weaker than her. On the other hand, the young, cold and single Lin Yunzhen is really a good match for Yao Beihi. In the few years that the two have worked together, Lin Yunzhen's reputation has been increasing step by step. In the eyes of outsiders, everyone thought that the two would be a match. At the same time, during a mission, one of Lin Yunzhen's subordinates from the Shenji camp died trying to save him. Before his death, the man named Su Wu hoped that Lin Yunzhen could take care of his daughter Su Shanshan. At first, Yao Beihi was actually very grateful to the man named Su Wu. When she learned that the Lin family would take Su Shanshan back to the Lin family, she actually offered to help Lin Yunzhen take care of Su Shanshan, but Lin Yunzhen refused. Since then, it seemed that Lin Yunzhen had someone to take care of. Lin Yunzhen no longer spent most of his time in the military camp as before. He spent more time away from the military camp, and even his stern and unsmiling expression became a little more smiling. Yao Beihi noticed his change and started to ask, but Lin Yunzhen rejected her coldly. It was not until 2 years later that a girl from Pingting came to the military camp to visit and called Yao Beihi in front of the cheers of everyone in Shenji camp. When Mrs. Lin spoke, Lin Yunzhen gently held the girl in his arms. At that moment, Yao Beihi felt as if her face had been mercilessly stepped on. The sympathetic and surprised eyes of the people around her made her heart feel cold. However, these years of military camp life had long forged her, and she forced herself to remain calm until later I found out that the girl was Su Shanshan. In front of her, Lin Yunzhen was smiling and gentle, and most importantly, the two had been engaged half a month ago. Yao Beihi couldn't help but find Lin Yunzhen, but he bluntly said that it was none of Yao Beihi's business and asked her, "Do you still think that the jokes made by others over the years can be taken seriously?" In a state of embarrassment, Yao Beihi naturally suppressed her inner hurt and pretended to be disapproving. Since then, although no one in the Shenji camp has made such a joke, Yao Beihi has remained silent. She spends a lot of time training every day. When she knows that Lin Yunzhen gets married, she has to grit her teeth and show a smile to attend. That feeling as if someone had punched me in the face and made me feel angry, but I couldn't find the wound. Su Shanshan is not the same type as her. Su Shanshan doesn't like to fight and kill. She doesn't have absolute strength. Her body is very weak and she can't even practice physical skills. But Lin Yun really likes her strength under her weakness, but doesn't like Yao Beihi's strength under her strength. So weak, she was completely defeated. During a mission with Lin Yunzhen, the group encountered interstellar pirates. Compared with alien creatures, the most troublesome thing for the Imperial Army is to encounter such a group of pirates. Many interstellar pirates are well equipped and can move freely among the stars. Not under the jurisdiction of any alliance country, acting willfully and openly, and killing people as much as they want. What Yao Beihi and Lin Yunzhen encountered was the famous pirate Cross Hall across the interstellar world. The pirates of Cross Hall are composed of 10 people in total, which is not many in number. Compared with many interstellar pirates who drive large spaceships and number in the hundreds of thousands, Cross Hall is not actually noticeable at first, but these 10 individually, he is far more difficult to deal with than other groups of doted pirates. Each of these 10 pirates can stand alone if separated. They are very difficult to deal with, and because of their small number, they are like ghosts in the interstellar space and are difficult to find. These 10 people are driving a spaceship in the interstellar space. Wormholes pass through the edges, coming and going without a trace, making many people hate and fear the name of Cross Hall. No one has really seen the characters of Cross Hall, and those who have seen it have a hard time surviving. When encountering such a group of pirates, Yao Beihi immediately applied for help from her superiors. She and Lin Yunzhen resisted desperately, but a few people in the Cross Hall were really powerful. When the two of them were in crisis, Lin Yunzhen offered to let her be the bait. Come at the request of your own attack. Although Yao Beihi hated Lin Yunzhen emotionally, after all, the two were comrades who had fought side by side for many years. Yao Beihi agreed to this request, but in the end she was really the bait, because Lin Yunzhen did not attack Cross Hall, and she became the bait to attract. After the people of Cross Hall attacked, he quickly evacuated in the spaceship, and she fell into the hands of Cross Hall. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 653. Just now I saw Yao Beihi independently launching a small battleship from the spaceship with the symbol of Shenji Camp. Knowing her identity, these interstellar pirates gave Yao Beihi two ways to go, either to join the interstellar pirates or to be sold for female slaves. According to Yao Beihi's skills, if she joins the Cross Hall, naturally, since the Cross Hall selects pirates and only elites, Yao Beihi is barely qualified. But if she is sold as a female slave, just based on her identity as a soldier of the Shenji battalion, plus her beautiful appearance will arouse the love of many wealthy perverts, which is enough to sell her for a good price. But the Yao family has guarded the empire for generations. Although Yao's father is not a famous public figure, the Yao family's family motto is still there. Decades of training in the empire have penetrated deep into her bones. She chose to resist. During the empire's training, both male and female soldiers had to endure hardships. She has been trained in the temptation of beauty, but Yao Beihi was strong enough in the past, so she did not need to use this trick. No one in the Shenji camp needed to rely on beauty to complete their missions. In order not to join the pirate organization and not treason, she chose to keep her head down, and finally Yao Beihi succeeded. She seduced the boss of the Cross Hall pirate organization, a man whose face she had never seen before, and successfully escaped. By the time she escaped from Cross Hall, it was already 2 years later. People in the Shenji camp thought she had already died or been sold into slavery. Yao Beihi's return surprised many people. In the past 2 years, because of Lin Yunzhen's successful mission, he had already been promoted to the leader of Shenji camp, and his wife Sushanshan was pregnant. Yao Beihe had already developed hatred for Lin Yunzhen at this time, but now the strength of the two is no longer at the same stage. Even a month after returning, she found out she was pregnant. In the interstellar age, with the improvement and optimization of human body quality, it is no longer simple and easy to get pregnant. Yao Beihe never thought that she would be pregnant, although the arrival of the child was not normal. But she still couldn't bear to abort the child. After hesitating in the end, the child slowly grew up in her belly day by day, and Yao Beihe was naturally reluctant to give it up. It's just that the large amount of daily training in the Shenji camp was obviously too much for Yao Beihe, who was obviously pregnant. She insisted on training every day, trying to hide it from everyone's eyes. A few months later, Lin Yunzhen's wife Sushanshan gave birth to a son in October. In the past few years, Lin Yunzhen had established a firm foothold in the Shenji camp. The people in the Shenji camp worshipped and respected him very much. Sushanshan was also the original god. The daughter of a colleague in the aircraft camp, after learning that she gave birth to a son, everyone in the camp was very excited about it. He clamored to meet Lin Yunzhen's future heir. Lin Yunzhen agreed, and Sushanshan came to the family area of Shenji camp for 2 days with her son in her arms. When she accidentally saw Yao Beihe, she couldn't help but asked, "Miss Yao was captured by the people of Cross Hall in 2 years, why have I gained some weight instead of losing weight? My belly is also getting bigger. Could it be that I am pregnant?" Her seemingly unintentional words shocked Shen Jiying, who had not thought much about it. Eventually rumors started to spread. Many people questioned the identity of Captain Yao Beihe. She was captured by interstellar pirates, and her reputation and personality have been stained. She is no longer the dazzling star she used to be. As long as she carries the reputation of being captured by pirates, she will live her whole life. It was impossible to take another step forward. In addition, because of her pregnancy, she could no longer keep up with the previous training intensity. In addition, Sushanshan's joke made more and more people in Shenji camp question her. More. Lin Yunzhen finally had to comply with everyone's request. After Yao Beihe was removed from the position of captain, many people who respected Yao Beihe in the past were wary of her strength because of her current weakness. She began to provoke her, and the Shenji camp respected strength. This is where the strong survive and the weak die. In the past, Yao Beihe was so powerful that no one dared to challenge her. But now that her strength is not as strong as before, many people naturally look down on her. It was under such circumstances that Yao Beihe gave birth to her son. This son came from a wrong path, and even had it in such a bad way, but after living in her belly for a year and being connected by her blood, Yao Beihe found that she couldn't help but love him. Every elite in the Shenji camp had an independent personality. In her room and residence, Yao Beihe hid her son in her nutrition cabin during training. After a few months, because everyone ignored Yao Beihe, no one even noticed that her belly had become flat again, and she no longer had her son in her body. Yao Beihe gradually returned to her previous state, using her strength to make those who dared to bully her become honest again. Half a year later, the alliance went to war with other countries, and Yao Beihe also received a mission. She did not dare to return her son to the Yao family. The Yao family had been loyal to the alliance for hundreds of years. If it was known that she had an affair with an interstellar pirate and gave birth to a son, Yao Beihe her father would definitely kill her son. She usually had no other friends, so in the end she had no choice but to lock her son in the nutrition cabin and add a large amount of nutrient solution before setting off on the mission. While the soldiers of the Alliance's Shenji battalion were on missions to other countries, elites from other countries sneaked into the Alliance first, causing a commotion. Lin Yunzhen, as the current leader of the Shenji battalion, is attracting attention. His wife and children someone plotted against him first. In order to protect Sushanshan and his son, Lin Yunzhen took his wife and children to the Shenji camp. In order to lure elites from other countries to appear and kill them in one fell swoop, Lin Yunzhen proposed using his wife and children as bait. This suggestion made everyone in the army admire him very much. The superiors made it clear that if the plan was successful, they would achieve military merit for Lin Yunzhen. In the end, the plan did succeed. Su Shanshan and her son lured out enemy spies. However, nothing happened to her, but her son died in the war. When Yao Beihe came back from completing her mission, she didn't take it seriously when she heard the news. But when she returned to her room, she discovered that her son was missing. Her originally locked nutrition cabin was opened, and the fat and white son in it was missing. Trace. Thinking of the rumors about returning to the Shenji camp, Yao Beihe's mind was buzzing and she went to find Lin Yunzhen. Next to him stood Su Shanshan wearing a big cloak. Everyone thought that Su Shanshan was in sorrow recently, so they treated her. There was no doubt about the cloak, but now Yao Beihe realized something was wrong. She attacked Su Shanshan first, but while Lin Yunzhen was resisting, Su Shanshan's cloak was torn off. She was holding her son in her arms, and her son was not there. If nothing happened, then the child who died was definitely not Lin Yunzhen. After being discovered by Yao Beihe, Lin Yunzhen simply admitted it. Su Shanshan found out that Yao Beihe was pregnant. When he knew that Lin Yunzhen wanted to kill the enemy's spies, he took the initiative to offer himself as a bait. Just because the interstellar offspring was precious, Lin Yunzhen now had no choice but to. With a bloodline, it is definitely impossible to take risks. Su Shanshan thought of Yao Beihe's belly. The last time she saw Yao Beihe's belly was bulging, but when she looked at it later, it was flat. Su Shanshan guessed that Yao Beihe was being held captive. She became pregnant during this period, and when she left, she found the child in the nutrition cabin in her room. Of course, there is no need to say more about what happened next. Yao Beihe's son was used as bait and died in that accident. Su Shanshan stared at Yao Beihe with an encouraging face, as if to cheer her up. Lin Yunzhen said coldly, "You are pregnant. You are a species of interstellar pirate. If this matter spreads, it will cause great damage to the reputation of Shenji camp, and it will also have a certain impact on the prestige of the army among the civilians of the empire. Your son cannot exist. He is just for the army." In the name of Zhong, he made the right choice and said, "You should feel honored to be able to eliminate hidden dangers and be loyal to the empire." Yao Beihe was caught because of his deception, otherwise she would have fallen into the hands of pirates, and how could she have given birth to a son? When she heard Lin Yunzhen's words again, Yao Beihe couldn't bear it. She attacked Lin Yunzhen and was regarded as an empire traitor. Lin Yunzhen ordered her to be captured. Yao Beihe worked hard for 30 years to become the pride of the empire and join the Shenji camp. However, it was just a short moment from the pride of the empire to the shame of the empire. Although Yao Beihe was strong, she was outnumbered. Because of her skills, he is a strong and dangerous person, so he was imprisoned in the empire's special prison detention center, where he will be imprisoned until death on charges of treason. The cell was full of monitors and isolation bodies, and the daily energy delivery could barely keep her alive. It only took a year for her body to weaken. When Lily came, she had already been imprisoned for treason. After a year of extreme physical weakness, the Yao family was very unforgiving of her because of her treason. After knowing the truth, the Yao family was already very unhappy with her. When something happened to Yao Beihe, the Yao family did not even see her once. After receiving the memory, Lily sighed silently, closing her eyes without opening them, a feeling of mania and resentment still lingering in her heart. Yao Beihe was unwilling to give in. She had been loyal to the empire for 30 years, but in the end, it ended up like this. Her son died in the hands of Lin Yunzhen. She wanted Lin Yunzhen to also experience the pain of losing a son. She wanted to let the entire God the Machine camp no longer exists. She wants to destroy it. This mission is very difficult. The most troublesome thing is that when Behi came to this mission, Yao Behi was already at his weakest. After being captured by the interstellar pirates, she at least still has freedom and is not completely desperate. Yao Behi could escape from the vicious interstellar pirates in the past, but in this place where surveillance is all around, all parties use special tools. In a prison made of materials that could not be destroyed even by bombardment with artillery shells, Yao Behi had nothing to do. She stayed here for a year, with hatred and resentment gnawing at her heart, but she was still getting weaker a little bit. The special jewelry she wore that restricted the chi she had developed not only suppressed her, the spirit and energy are still devouring the abilities in her body. Back then, Yao Behi was an elite in the Shenji camp. Now, let alone defeating the soldiers in the Shenji camp, Yao Behi might not even be able to defeat an ordinary imperial soldier. He may not be able to beat it. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan Erwr. Chapter 654. If you want to take revenge, you must have a chance to take revenge. Now you are under the surveillance of others all the time. You can't even escape from others' eyes when you practice martial arts. You lose every opportunity. The resentment and anxiety of the original owner still remain in your body. All kinds of things. The feeling made Lily smile bitterly. The vest was close to the cold floor underground, and the coldness penetrated the thin prison clothes and seemed to penetrate straight into her heart. Lily sighed and went through the memory of the original owner again. No wonder she hadn't seen her surroundings just now. She is a person, but she always finds that someone is watching her. Now she understands the reason. Fortunately, she has always been cautious, so she will not do anything suspicious. Lily moved her fingers slightly. This subtle movement was magnified several times and displayed in the monitoring room. From Yao Behi's memory, Lily knew this, and couldn't help but laugh a few times. Every move is under the watchful eye of others. There is also physical training in this era, which is quite similar to Xin Chen physical training and has similar effects. Unfortunately, Yao Behi dare not practice it. Once she makes the slightest move, people will look at her. In her eyes, she made corresponding responses, such as the presence of substances in her nutritious meals that could damage body functions, leaving her unable to move for several days, or making her fall into a coma. This kind of life made people feel desperate. In the name of the empire, she was not sentenced to death, but in fact such a life was not much better than death. It not only gave Yao Behi a glimmer of hope, but it also cruelly wore away her vitality. Lily lay quietly on the ground trying to save her energy as much as possible. The place where Yao Lily is now is a special prison where the most dangerous people are imprisoned in the empire. About every 10 days or so, there is a ventilation hole in the ceiling about the size of a baby's palm. A box of compressed food will be thrown in, which can sustain her body's minimum needs for 7 or 8 days. If she moves a lot, she will starve and there will be no food for the remaining 2 days. She had to find a way to get through it on her own. It had been 7 days since the last delivery of compressed food. Lily felt very hungry at the moment, but the next delivery of food would be 3 days later. In my memory, Yao Behi was just imprisoned here. I have not given up, and have explored every corner of this place, but the material used to make this prison is called steel microcrystalline. It not only has super defensive properties, but is also full of chips. As long as the chips are combined with the matching projector, through the connection, any object that has ever appeared within the steel microcrystal range can be transmitted in a four-dimensional manner to the projector connected to the chip. This method of photography is called memory storage by the world. It can completely copy the sound of a person's breathing, speaking, and even the smell of the body to the projector. Because of these effects, steel microcrystals are widely used. Applications: especially some military materials and battleships and spacecraft, are all made of steel microcrystals. When the original owner knew that the prison he was in was made of steel microcrystals, he calculated the blow that the prison cell could withstand. She never gave up her desire to escape, but after calculating that even if the cell was bombed 3 times with the latest laser cannon, it might not be possible to open it, Yao Bei became desperate. With her strength, even with weapons in hand, it would not be easy to destroy this prison, not to mention that now she has nothing on her body except her hair, clothes, and nails. This mission Leng Huiwei seems to be a dead end. Can't escape. Everyone can clearly see it by moving their eyes, but no one cares about her. Lily practices star training by herself to strengthen her strength. It is not easy to break out of this cage. On the day Yao Bei was imprisoned, the prison was completely locked. It exists only for her alone. Even if people outside don't use brute force, they can't open it at all, unless one day someone controls the program and destroys the cage together with her. Li Yangzi was not in the starry sky. A shadow flashed across Bei's heart at first, but soon, her eyes slowly became firm again. She would never give up. The average lifespan of people in this era is about 200 years. Yao Bei her son is less than 40 years old. Even if she only lives to be 200 years old like ordinary people, she still has 160 years. In such a long time, she can slowly think of a solution. In the following time, Lily tried her best to lie down and not move. The instrument on her wrist flashed with green light. This instrument was something that could contain the chi she had developed. I wonder if this thing was possible. It can suppress the internal force. In the past few days, Lily has been working hard to adjust her body and practice her internal strength. However, probably because of the equipment, the effect is not very obvious. After a few days, Lily can't even feel the chi. Unknowingly, 3 days passed. Suddenly, a small hole opened in the place where the top of the head was tightly sealed. A piece of cheese-like thing fell down and bounced next to her twice. Lily took a look and struggled. He reached over and picked it up, holding it in his hand. She was very hungry. The compressed food had no taste and was extremely hard. Lily took a hard bite, chewed it up and swallowed it into her stomach. The food slowly turned into heat energy, and she felt full in her stomach. She only ate a small half of the piece, and she lowered her head and slid the remaining half into her cuffs with the help of her long hair. With some strength in her body, Lily crawled to the corner and sat up. For a few days, she kept touching the instrument on her wrist. This thing was made of special materials and contained a temperature that was very different from the human body. It was like a human being's third body. It was like a second layer of skin, clinging to the body and impossible to remove. Lily was thinking about how to get out of this predicament. 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. During these 2 months, Lily sat quietly in the corner. Except for picking up food once every 10 days, she spent the rest of the time sitting cross-legged. This situation made the surveillance her people were starting to feel a little impatient. In the past, Yao Bei couldn't help but struggle, scream, and curse, as if she was going crazy. After all, being locked up in a place alone with no one else and no other sounds can easily make people feel confused. Collapse, but Lily doesn't have it now. She is too quiet. She has not changed for dozens of days in a row. She has her eyes closed, as if dead, and can't even move her eyeballs. Her breathing rate is the same, and her heartbeat is the same. There was no change in blood pressure, except when picking up food every 10 days, she was almost like a dead thing. When picking up food, her crawling method was exactly the same, her movements were the same, and her expressions were the same. Even her movements when chewing and swallowing food seemed to be fixed by the computer. Those who monitored Lily soon felt a kind of silent torture. At the beginning, some people suspected that there was something wrong with the monitor. Logically speaking, there would be no problem with the steel microcrystals, but the situation was too weird at the moment. Yao Beihe was originally very dangerous, although due to her past standing because of the merit and the fact that she had made a mistake and was related to Lin Yunzhen, the empire did not execute her. But if Yao Beihe lives one day, some people who know the inside story will be anxious. Many people are waiting for her to die. They know that Yao Beihe is equivalent to a living dead after entering this prison, but as long as she is still breathing, there are still people who are worried. Soon, not only did some people enter the prison to talk to Lily through the steel microcrystal connection method, but they even made requests for Lily to change positions. The possibility of something going wrong in steel microcrystal is very small, but Lily's current situation is obviously not normal. These people need to see other movements in Lily and make sure that there are no problems with steel microcrystal surveillance, so that they can feel relieved. When listening to this tall man with blonde hair asking Lily to stay in the four corners of the room, and threatening that if Lily refused to obey the command, the Empire could apply for injections and inspections on her, Lily sneered in her heart, and then climbed to the other side in the same mechanical way. When the monitoring room at the other end saw her crawling and the characters on the projector also moving, everyone in the monitoring room breathed a sigh of relief. There was no problem with the surveillance. The problem was with Yao Beihe. After confirming that there was no problem with the surveillance, Lily has now become more honest again. At first, some people were still concerned about her behavior, but later on, some people gradually became impatient with this way of watching a still life painting. Although the superiors still warned Yao Beihe that he was a dangerous person, when faced with a person who only knows how to sit all day long, and his whole body does not change day after day, even the most patient person cannot bear it at all. Normal people couldn't bear this situation, but Lily managed to hold on for half a year with excellent patience and endurance. After half a year, the people on the other end of the monitor had become accustomed to looking at Lily's side every day. After discovering that she had not changed at all, she quickly moved her eyes away. In the past 6 months, after Lily discovered that practicing internal skills was of no use at all, and her sense of energy was all locked by the things on her wrists, she began to mentally calculated the formula for the optical particles in this special cell. Sometimes people's naked eyes can deceive themselves. A person's fatness and position may undergo extremely subtle changes due to the changes in light and the speed of the person's movements. The original owner has learned a lot in the past due to tasks. Lily used to stay still in the same place just to make the person on the other end of the monitor ignore her. Even as long as she calculated a formula, according to this formula, she should be able to do it. Subtle movement and giving the impression that you are still in the same place. During this period, Lily wanted to try whether the 5 elements and Bagua technique could work with this formula. If it could, then her chance would come. If it didn't, she would have to find another way. But no matter what, as long as there is still a glimmer of hope, she doesn't want to give up easily. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 655. In half a year, Lily has calculated the formula in her mind several times. After all, it is related to the success or failure of her mission. She does not dare to be careless in the slightest. During this period of time, she maintains it day after day. The same posture made these people relax their vigilance. When receiving food every 10 days, while crawling, she calculated the size of this special cell based on the previous owner's actions, and which position was beneficial to her, Lily felt. They were all counted, and since 3 months ago, she had started tearing off small pieces of rags from her clothes and waiting for them in the position of the 5 elements and Bagua array that she had already calculated. All of this was done inadvertently, it was the monitor. When the people on the other end saw it, I'm afraid they would only focus most of their attention on her. The placement of the 5 elements and Bagua and the optical formula calculated in her mind, if successful, the changes in optical shadows can stop time for a short period of time through the steel microcrystalline four-dimensional projector. This so-called stopping of time, it's not really about stopping time, but using the laws of light and shadow so that the projector that monitors you can show the scene as before during this period of time. Lily can do her own thing in the middle. Lily has made repeated calculations in the past 6 months. Because the steel microcrystal contains a chip and is controlled by the optical brain and not the human eye, even if certain small means can be used to create hallucinations, it does not seem to deceive the human eye. Therefore, the time she can make it stop is limited, probably within 20 to 30 seconds. After spending more than half a year, enduring the depression and discomfort that could drive people crazy every day, and sitting motionless for so long, Lily cherished this opportunity she finally got. Now, even though she can't see the person on the other side of the monitor, Lily is still confident that the person on the other side of the monitor is no longer as wary of her as she was at the beginning. 2.5 months passed in this way, except for some irregular scraps of prison clothes on the ground. Lily still couldn't bear it. As she expected, the person on the other end of the monitor was obviously focused on her body and did not realize the difference between these small pieces of clothing slowly appearing on the ground. Maybe some people realized it at first, but when they saw the fragments on the ground, they didn't take it seriously at first because of the small number. Later, because Lily was very patient, the fragments increased very slowly, so as time went by, there was an increase in debris on the ground, and no one came in to see it through the projector. After a long period of time, this bagua array is finally almost completed. Tomorrow is the 10th day of receiving food. She only had to put the last piece of clothing on top when receiving the food, and the formation would be completed. This day felt particularly difficult. When the person on the other end of the monitor felt that Lily was closing her eyes, she was counting silently in her heart. When a small space finally appeared above her head, there was compressed food again. When it was thrown down, Lily crawled over slowly. She must be careful not to touch the things that have been placed on the ground, otherwise the slightest mistake will bring immeasurable consequences. When she crawls to the food and crawls back before she can sit firmly in her position, Lily will be early. He threw the prepared cloth on the last position he had planned and sat down immediately. Suddenly there was a beeping sound from around the prison. It was obvious that the smart chip in the steel microcrystal started to sound an alarm. Lily stood up quickly. She was betting that she had been staying in the corner for nearly a year. No matter the expression or appearance, it remains mechanically unchanged. If her calculation method is wrong at this moment, someone will definitely look at the abnormal sound of her standing up and the sound of the monitor. If there is no abnormality within 5 seconds, it proves that her calculation is successful. At the other end of the control room, someone heard the chip alarm coming from Lily's cell and subconsciously glanced at the cell where she was. The formation has taken effect, and the time is frozen after she has taken the food and sat down. Her expression is expressionless, her breathing and heartbeat are exactly the same as usual, and her blood pressure has not changed at all. Although she does not know how the optical brain can make an alarm sound. But this situation was exactly the same as usual, and soon the person in front of the monitor frowned and moved his eyes away. Lily's calculation was successful. No one came to check within a few seconds after she stood up, proving that her calculation was correct. Her time was limited, and she had just wasted a moment. At this time, Lily did not hesitate to scratch the sharp nails that she had chewed on before on her wrist wearing the instrument. In order to prevent the blood from dripping to the ground, when the blood streaks came out, he had already stuck out his tongue and licked it. The control device that could lock her chi machine was peeled off by Lily along with a thin layer of her skin. The pain was unbearable, but Lily moved quickly and without any delay. In about 10 seconds, the thing with the green light left her body, and the feeling that had been pressing on her for a long time was instantly gone. Because it was connected to human flesh and fresh blood, the light was still shining as usual. As she looked, there seemed to be a stream of sweet rain slowly pouring out of her exhausted body. Lily endured the pain, sat back down, tore off the fabric from the hem of her clothes, wrapped it around the wound on her wrist, and finally wrapped it around the wound on her wrist. The green light was tied to the location of her wound, fixed with cloth, and the sleeves were pulled down, half hiding the secret between her wrists. After doing all this, Lily adjusted her heart, which was beating rapidly due to pain, and the alarm that had been ringing rapidly in the prison quickly calmed down. The trick she just did was able to fool the optical brain for a while, but the smart optical brain can automatically adjust the chip settings when it detects something is wrong. In the future, even if Lily uses optical principles again, it will be impossible to fool the optical brain again. Calculation is not as precise as smart instruments, but luckily I found this opportunity and it was enough. The people at the other end of the monitoring room did not notice what she had just done. Except for someone who smelled a faint smell of blood, they could not find the source at all, and finally ignored it. After stripping off the equipment that suppressed the chi machine, Lily no longer sat there as before. After the prison returned to normal, she began to get up and walk around, shouting from time to time, "Let me out." At first, her actions shocked the people in the monitoring room. After all, the still life painting suddenly changed. A group of people were still in danger, but as Lily yelled, some people couldn't help but laugh. "You can get in. People in this prison have no chance of getting out in this life." Yao Bei should be very clear about this. She was from the Shenji camp back then, but now she shouted such innocent words. Many people thought she was being imprisoned. After so long, I finally went crazy. This situation is not uncommon. Many special prisoners are locked in a secret room with no one to talk to. They stay in a small box-like place all day long. Problems will occur over time. The long human life will make people miserable in such despair. People go crazy, and many people don't even survive a few years, and there are also a few who choose self-destruction. Many people think that Lily can persist for so long before starting to go crazy. In the first few days, Lily beat the floor desperately and shouted to let her out. When no one paid any attention to her, she started to do physical training movements again, but her movements were not standardized at first. While doing this, he was still shouting, "Let me out." When the people on the other end saw this scene, they thought she was going crazy more and more. Not to mention that she was wearing a device that locked her chi. No matter how hard she practiced in her life, it would never work, even for her. She wasn't wearing this thing at all, and now she was watching Lily practice her movements like crazy, yelling every word, and her movements were not standard. It was impossible for people to think that she could achieve anything with her practice. Soon, because of Lily's sudden abnormal behavior, people noticed her for a while and stopped observing her. No one noticed that Lily's daily physical training time was slowly increasing. Every movement she practiced from the beginning he shouted once, and it took several actions before he shouted. Lily changed slowly and patiently. Each of her subtle changes would last for a certain period of time, allowing the people in the monitoring room to get used to her behavior, and then they would start the next practice. Later, when she finished a set of physical training moves and started shouting, no one came to ask her. Everyone thought she had gone crazy. During this period, Lily began to practice day and night. Physical skills. After the instrument was stripped from her body, it could no longer lock the spiritual power into her body. Her originally dry muscles and veins were quickly filled with spiritual power. Yao Bei already had a certain foundation. After Bei practiced for a while, coupled with the cooperation of the Nine Yang Manual, she quickly returned to the previous level when Yao Bei was strong. When the people who monitored her day after day thought she was crazy, Lily took advantage of these times to practice desperately. For people on the interstellar world, although physical training can strengthen the body, it is not effective because it is introduced into the body. There is no way to retain and lock the spiritual energy, so it does not play a big role. Lily has maximized the benefits of physical training. The environment here does not change throughout the year. The light source of automatic lighting in the prison exists according to the human body's breathing, pulse and blood pressure. As long as she is alive and breathing, as long as her heart is still beating, the light will never go out. Locked here, she couldn't feel the difference between day and night. Lily didn't know how long she had been in this prison, but the muscles and veins in her body became more and more full. At first, she retained the spiritual energy for her own use. It's just that when she later practiced physical skills, she was able to use not only the spiritual power within her body, but also the spiritual power outside her body for her own use at any time. She had endured it for so long, and now she finally didn't want to endure it anymore. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 656. To escape from such a place, Lily can't completely break the wall by herself, and she doesn't know if there is a thick steel wall besides the steel microcrystals. This one underground the road was definitely impassable. Even if she tried her best to destroy the steel microcrystals in the ground, there was no way she could dig out a road to escape under the thick underground under the eyes of others. The idea of using brute force to destroy the cell had already been abandoned when Lily was about to escape. The steel microcrystal had almost no weaknesses and was extremely hard. Even if Lily could break the crystal with her spiritual power, if the person at the other end of the monitoring room discovered that she was with one move, I am afraid that the order to destroy the cell will be given immediately. If you want to escape from this place, the only way is to destroy the chip in the steel microcrystal, then paralyze the equipment in the control room, and then use it yourself. See if you can find a way to escape through the opening where food is delivered. As for destroying the chip in the steel microcrystal, because this thing is a special device, it naturally has its own protection program. If you just destroy one of them, the smart optical brain will automatically repair it. If you want to make it unable to operate for a long time, you can only short-circuit it. Something went wrong from within. Lily's eyes fell on the control device on her wrist, and her eyes narrowed slightly. When food was thrown down again, Lily began to calculate the time for the next food throw. When the next food was just about to be thrown, a gap appeared silently above her head. Lily suddenly held on. After she had practiced martial arts to such an extent, it was very easy for her to pretend to be dead. She kept her eyes open calmly, but there was no breath in her mouth. At that moment, her heart was wrapped in spiritual power and stopped beating. If anyone came to see it, they would know that she was not dead at this moment, but the instrument was different. The intelligent optical brain sensed this situation. It was judged that she was dead, and the bright lights above her head suddenly went dark. Is Yao Bei dead? The originally bright projector in the control room suddenly went dark, and it took a while for someone to react. He asked involuntarily, and everyone had confused looks on their faces. The light brain showed that everything was normal and there was no problem. However, the light in the prison went out. This situation indicated that the person in the prison should be dead. Die. There will be no problems with the intelligent optical brain, someone replied coldly. In an era of rapid technological development, people's dependence on machinery has reached an unprecedented level. Human beings firmly believe that there may be problems with their brains and their eyes may deceive themselves, but humans will never think that there will be problems with sophisticated instruments and intelligent optical brains. Yao Bei must be dead, otherwise the optical brain would not be able to sense all her functions were lost, including breathing and heartbeat. Even the light source that sensed her vitality was cut off at this moment, so she must be dead. This person's answer was unanimously agreed by everyone in the surveillance room. Some people even said with certainty, Yao Bei has been practicing physical skills like crazy for more than 6 years. Her energy and mental power have long been locked. Practicing physical skills cannot help her sense of energy. If she continues to practice like this, She will only waste her own vitality. Such an idiot could enter the Shenji camp before. It really insults the reputation of our Shenji camp. These words caused a group of people to burst into laughter. Tang laughed and monitored Yao Beihe for 8 years. These people treated her like a formidable enemy from the beginning. Later, he despised her very much. They even felt that such surveillance was just a waste of time, and the person who wasted 8 years of their time was finally dead. Since Yao Beihe is dead, please apply to destroy this prison. This prison originally existed for Yao Beihe, from the moment it was imprisoned. Then the automatic locking program was set up, making it impossible to open it again. Apart from destroying it together with Yao Beihe's body, this cell had no other use. Everyone nodded and began to prepare a report. Come. At this moment, Lily in the prison took advantage of the moment when the light darkened to pull off the controller wrapped around her wrist. In order to keep the controller bright in the past few years, she had to think about it every once in a while. She found a way to make some wounds on her wrists so that it could be exposed to fresh blood from time to time so that it wouldn't dim and arouse the suspicion of the monitors. Now she could finally tear this thing off. Even in the dark, her 5 senses had become very sharp due to her martial arts training, so the dark environment did not affect her movements. She used her spiritual power with her palms and gently crushed the instrument. Lily's movements were extremely quickly took apart the instruments inside. The light panel on the instrument had its own power supply with a lifespan of more than 100 years. After separating the tiny wires, Lily thought of the window where food was thrown before, and she lifted her feet and flew away. Go up. The person throwing food above his head obviously did not expect that the person below him would die suddenly when he was throwing it, so the gap was not closed when he was stunned. When Lily flew up, he reached out to grab the gap and grope for the surrounding boards. Fortunately, except for the gap, the material on it is not steel microcrystals, but another kind of colloidal insulator. Use spiritual power to shatter the insulator. Lily licked her lips and touched the complex inside with one hand. Several wires were easily torn off. Zzz, as the line was torn off, a subtle firelight and the smell of burnt objects were emitted from the surroundings. In the originally quiet prison, the optical brain contained in the steel microcrystals emitted a zzz sound again. When the warning sounded, Lily held her breath, casually connected the wire in her hand, and then reopened the disconnected battery panel. After doing all this, she fell to the ground. The optical brain that was repairing itself after the wires above the head were torn was suddenly connected to a power source that did not belong to the body, and suddenly issued a rapid warning sound. This is like an organ that does not belong to a healthy person suddenly appearing in the body. There were sizzling fires all around, and the alarms in the prison became more and more urgent. Lily smiled and used her spiritual power to protect her body. At this time, the control room was reporting to the top, asking for the monitors who destroyed the cage turned around involuntarily when they heard the alarm sound and stared at the screen with doubts on their faces. The sound of the current is getting louder and louder. The optical brain can expel malicious programs and repair its own vulnerabilities, but the optical brain cannot destroy the extra battery and wires on its own. Warning, warning, there is an unknown power supply connected, the program is about to crash, please evacuate. An alarm suddenly sounded in Guang's brain, and the people in the monitoring room were startled. Before they had time to react, the electric current started to flow. The steel microcrystals began to swim around, illuminating these translucent crystals all at once. In the originally dark prison, Lily's smiling face appeared in front of everyone in the surveillance room in the flickering firelight. She originally thought she was dead. When they saw her standing quietly in the corner, many people had not come back to their senses at all. Warning, warning, the program is about to crash, please evacuate. 3, 2, the optical brain's alarm sounded more urgent than before, and even started to count down. The control room suddenly became a mess, and no one could care about it at the moment. The people who had just seen Lily alive were all rushing to escape, but before these people could escape, the sound of the brain counting to 1, and the subtle explosion sound of puff sounded all around. The rapid current spread quickly in the steel microcrystalline wall, and the chips inside were quickly burned. With large automatic programs destroyed, the optical brain could not withstand this pressure, especially because of the design of the steel microcrystalline. There was no room for the optical brain to relieve the pressure. In the end, the breakdown of various subtle programs led to an even bigger explosion. There was a loud boom that shook the entire prison. To destroy something that is so hard on the outside, no matter how powerful the external blow is, the optical brain inside can automatically repair it. Sure enough, it will be truly destroyed. Only starting from within the department, no matter which aspect this law applies to. When Lily felt the vibrations all around, her body was wrapped in a spiritual power, and she slowly rose into the air. The power of the explosion was far beyond her imagination. The steel microcrystal could not withstand the pressure. The package shattered, with a clang sound, as if the ice was broken, and the fragments flew everywhere. Lily was knocked around by the impact of the explosion. Even though she was wrapped with spiritual power, there were still some fragments. When it exploded, it scratched her face, still causing her body to feel stabbing pains. The moment the bang-bang explosion sounded, a large amount of sand and crystal fragments fell from above the head, and a stream of fresh air surged in with the heat wave of the explosion. It was different from the circulating clean air automatically generated in the prison, but the kind that brought smelling the smell of gunpowder smoke and dust. After being imprisoned for so many years, when Lily looked up and saw the twinkling stars in the night sky, she finally couldn't hold it back and sighed, "I'm out." As the sound of the explosion below sounded, she followed the heat wave, relaxed her body, allowed herself to be lifted up by the air wave generated by the explosion, and bounced into the air. A large amount of spiritual power poured in. In her body was as light as a meteor and quickly streaking towards the sky. A large amount of strong wind blew against her body, causing her body to feel a little tingling. However, all this did not damage Lily's extremely good mood. Looking down, the original prison below was now in a mess. The explosion caused by the current short circuit prevented some people in the control room from escaping. The huge explosion even triggered the guard, but the system paralyzed by the surge of current, the fire and explosion protection system was unable to respond immediately. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 657. Flames shot into the sky. Due to the system paralysis in this explosion, automatic protection measures could not be implemented at all. The disadvantages of human dependence on machinery in the interstellar era have emerged. They have too much trust in the sophisticated and intelligent optical brain. Therefore, once there is a problem with the optical brain, even the so-called elites will be in chaos for a while. Not far away, there are flashes of light surging towards this side. This is the place of exile where the Empire detains felons. Usually, some warrior training camps are also here. There was an explosion here. Not far away. There will definitely be fighter planes coming from the military base. Lily was shot into the air by the airflow, and soon began to fall again. The fire below burned brighter and louder, and the huge explosion sound will cause the screams of some people who were detained here and could not escape. The sound was drowned out. When Lily fell, she tried her best to adjust her posture. Several figures in the camp fled out in embarrassment, still flapping the sparks on their bodies. When Lily saw this scene, she pursed her lips, twisted her body, and turned directly. He rushed towards these figures. What's going on? How could there be an explosion here? Several Shenji battalion soldiers finally managed to save their lives. Thinking of the accident just now, everyone's face was still filled with joy of surviving the disaster. Someone asked subconsciously, and before they had time to speak, several people saw Lily rushing over from the corner of their eyes. Before they had time to twist their bodies to avoid it, Lily kicked someone hard on the vest. When she kicked out, she contained spiritual power. The soldier wearing camouflage uniform felt as if his internal organs had been kicked out of place. He could only hear the click sound of his own bones breaking, and his body flew up involuntarily and fell into the light of the explosion. There was a look of horror on the man's face. He tried his best to stabilize his body, but the strength of Lily's kick made it impossible for him to resist. There was a look of despair in his eyes, and his body was quickly submerged in the firelight. As the explosion sounded, it turned into a pool of blood mist and exploded. After dealing with this person, the other two people quickly took out their address books and photon weapons, and Lily snorted. He grabbed the handsome young man with golden curly hair and wrapped his arms around his neck like a snake. With just a squeeze, the young man's neck bones made a frightening crunching sound, and his green eyes were almost strangled. Out of his eyes, the blood on his originally white face quickly faded away. His face was tilted at an abnormal angle, and the hand that originally wanted to grab Lily's head was there. Before he even touched her shoulder, she dropped it weakly. After breaking his neck bones, Lily lifted up his body and threw it at the soldier who had the photon weapon. The soldier retreated backwards and fired a shot at Lily. Wherever the bright light source appeared, it was as if the dust particles in the air were melted, and a big hole was quickly drilled into the body of the young man who was smashed by Lily. Lily mobilized her spiritual power and appeared in front of the man as fast as lightning. Before he could fire the second shot, she grabbed his wrist and bent it hard, causing the soldier's wrist to bend at an abnormal angle. Turning back, the mouth of the photon weapon was pointed at himself. Lily followed his finger and quickly pressed the start button. There was a look of fear in his pupils. One word came out of his mouth. "Yeah." He didn't have a chance to say the remaining two words. A bright light source shone out, and his entire head was blown open silently. Because of the extremely high temperature, not even a drop of blood was seen. The aroma of roasted meat could be smelled all around, and his headless body fell to the ground. Lily calmly put away the weapon. On the one hand, he began to explore this person. The prison uniform on her body was worn out. Lily quickly pulled off the camouflage uniform on this person and put it on. The battleship not far away was getting closer and closer. Lily looked back and frowned. What was coming was several battleships must have been sent by soldiers from the nearby military camp. If they were not battleships but just soldiers, she would not be afraid even if they were highly skilled. However, the battleship was different. If the battleship bombarded her, she would probably have to escape if she wanted to. It's also difficult. In the past, Yao Bei was a soldier of the Shenji Battalion, and had also piloted battleships. These battleships could completely scan humans and animals. Even if she was hiding in a cement pool, she still could not escape. Bei cursed a few words in her heart, and soon he kicked the two corpses into the fire, tore off a strand of his prison clothes and tied up his waist-length hair. He used his spiritual power under his feet and ran quickly in the opposite direction of the warships. Even though her steps were like the wind, she was still much slower than the battleship. Those star-like light spots were getting bigger and bigger. In a few minutes, Lily had not escaped very far, and the original cell behind her could still be faintly seen. Seeing the light of the fire, a group of battleships behind her were already floating in the air. Lily did not dare to stop. She had to find the remaining living objects before the group of battleships caught her, and mix them with them, hoping to shrink her body. The body shape can prevent oneself from being scanned. The armor over there didn't stay long. The fire that was rising into the sky was quickly extinguished by the heavy rain falling from the intelligence. As if it was clear that someone was escaping, the sound of the warship taking off sounded again, and the sound should be rushing in my direction. Come over. Lily cursed a few words in her heart. She herself had been injured in the process of escaping from the prison. At this time, she could not find a group of people who could be protected, and the smell was left behind. Her heart sank, and she became even faster. After walking a few steps, Lily could almost hear the sound of the battleship breaking through the air behind her. Lily held her breath and didn't dare to stop. At this moment, a fiery red light seemed to shine from the horizon and cut through quietly. The entire night sky was filled with this scorching hot wave, which was almost as if it was drying out the flesh and blood in the human body, destroying everything it touched. Lily wrapped herself tightly with spiritual power. She subconsciously looked back and saw that one of the warships that was chasing her was still penetrated even though she had tried her best to dodge. At this moment, the scattered debris fell to the ground. On the ground. Enemy attack. Level 10 mecha. Enemy attack. Level 10 mecha. Enemy attack. Level 10 mecha. A battleship suddenly turned around and flew back. A mechanical female voice gave a warning, shouting 3 times in a row. At the end of the red light, the huge black mecha moved towards the side like a dark cloud. The 10th level mecha could launch an attack like that just once, but if it wanted to attack again, it would need to re-reserve energy, and if it was a normal attack, it does not work for battleships, and the same goes for battleships. Photon cannons have limited impact on level 10 mechas. The aircraft owned by both sides have strong defensive capabilities. By this time, the battle is no longer about mechas, but the real strength. The mecha and the battleship quickly merged. After the hatch was opened, people from both sides stood up. Lily looked at the scene from a distance with an uncertain expression. The people of the Empire will definitely kill her now and then quickly. She cannot fall into the hands of the Empire, otherwise she will have no chance of survival if she is captured again this time. And the high-level mecha that suddenly appeared came from nowhere. The opponent it was unclear whether she was a friend or an enemy, but if she missed this opportunity, when the high-level mecha left and the Empire's warships scanned her, there would be no way for her to survive. Lily struggled a little in her heart. At this time, after the mecha connected with the battleship, it slowly floated towards her direction. A platform as spacious as several football fields was formed in the middle of the rail. The place was already full of people, but she hesitated and did not leave. Being close, Lily could naturally see these figures clearly. In addition to the Imperial Sergeant wearing camouflage uniforms, there were 7 or 8 other figures in different costumes. One of them was wearing a white gorgeous evening dress, with his soft long hair tied up. Looking at the tall and slender figure surrounded by them, Lily could only see the back profile, and could not see his face clearly, and did not know whether he was a man or a woman, but the mecha was flying closer and closer, and there was a huge cross on it. But she could clearly see that he was from Cross Church. Since the mecha belonged to Cross Hall, these people were naturally the pirates of Cross Hall. Lily felt relieved. Compared to the Empire that wanted to kill her, it was obvious that the vicious pirates of Cross Hall were much more trustworthy. She ran towards the mecha without hesitation. When she was halfway through the run, her body lifted up and her steps were piled up with spiritual power. From a distance, it looked like someone was climbing up the illusory ladder in mid-air, as if she felt Lily's movement. As they approached, the wary men and horses on both sides turned their heads. The tall and thin figure surrounded in the cross hall did not turn around, but just stretched out a hand in Lily's direction. He put his left hand on his waist, and hung a slender ancient sword on his waist. Following his movements, the people in the cross hall who had originally surrounded him subconsciously moved away from each other. When Lily saw this scene, she let out a sigh of relief. She flew up, and when she was about to hit the transparent protective shield, someone in the mecha opened the protective shield and let her in. Her feet were firmly planted on the ground, and she breathed a sigh of relief. The slender white hand was still stretched out towards her. A group of Imperial soldiers wearing camouflage uniforms across from them all took a breath when they saw Lily. They stood at the front with their hands clasped into fists on their chests, their faces stern. Who else is this young man other than Lin Yunzhen? Yao Beihe, you're not dead. As if he couldn't believe this fact, Lin Yunzhen's face made of frost cracked in an instant. His eyes widened and he subconsciously exclaimed. It was he who killed Yao Beihe in the first place. He was sent to the prison in person. The prison had imprisoned countless felons in the past 1,000 years. There were not many people who were more outstanding than Yao Beihe, but no prisoner had ever successfully escaped. Not to mention that the prison was destroyed, he should have died. Yao Beihe actually escaped from the prison at this time and appeared here. And judging from her skills just now, it doesn't look like she has been imprisoned for several years at all. Even with her luck just now, I'm afraid she can't even survive. Even though he is known as a prodigy in the military, he has many shortcomings. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 658. How could you still be alive? As soon as Lin Yunzhen finished speaking, the tall and thin figure in a white evening gown finally turned his head. He wore a butterfly-shaped silver mask on his face, and the lower half of his face was covered by the mask. Delicate as jade, Lily ignored Lin Yunzhen and looked at him. His lips moved. Come here. When he said this, the familiar and cold tone sounded, and Lily threw herself into his arms without hesitation. Why are you here? Lily was a little surprised. She stood on tiptoes and tried to take off the silver mask covering the tall and thin man's face. This move made everyone who was originally surrounding the man fall. Taking a breath of cold air, she originally thought that this drow figure would slap her away without hesitation, but to her surprise, he did not move even while standing, only slightly raising the corners of his lips. This figure was extremely arrogant in the eyes of the pirates in Cross Hall. The man of this generation lowered his head and meekly allowed Lily to take off the butterfly-shaped mask on his face. Li Yangzi's elegant and handsome face appeared in front of Lily. Although Lily had been filled with excitement when she heard him speak before, she had already guessed his identity, but now that she really saw his face, she bit her lip, put her head on his chest, and hugged him gently, feeling indescribably relieved. When she was at her most helpless, Lily saw Li Yangzi appearing in the mission. Lily's heart had been lifted before, but now she finally returned to where she was. Yao Beihe, you actually colluded with Cross Hall and escaped. Do you want to betray the Empire? Lin Yunzhen's face was very ugly. There seemed to be frost between his eyebrows. He stared at Lily with cold eyes. He really didn't expect that. Yao Beihe, who thought he would never meet face to face in person, would appear in front of him again at this time. Yao Beihe was sent to prison by him personally. But she didn't refuse to die, and escaped with her life. In addition to destroying the prison made of steel microcrystals through programming, even photon cannon bombardment may not be able to smash the cell to pieces. If you want to destroy it from the outside without knowing the inside layout, it will be difficult to destroy the steel microcrystalline prison, and this prison exploded. The explosion was so powerful that Lily could still escape. This really made Lin Yunzhen feel chilled. When he and Yao Beihe were on a mission, they encountered the pirates of Cross Hall. When there was no hope for them to escape, in order to survive, Lin Yunzhen lured Yao Beihe into using bait, and finally left her behind and ran away. The child begins to form a bridge. It was already the end of a fight to the death. Unexpectedly, he later personally locked Yao Beihe into what was known as the strongest prison in the world, and Lily could still appear in front of him again. The original flames of the prison that exploded not far away have been extinguished by artificial rainfall, but the strong smell of smoke after the explosion still remains and has not completely dissipated. The battleship had just scanned it when it flew over, and there was no trace below any living thing. Obviously, no one escaped alive in this explosion. Among the dead were several elites from the Shenji camp. Even such elites could not escape, but Lily, who had been imprisoned for 8 years, had she left that place intact. Not only did she not die in the aftermath of the explosion, but judging from the situation when she boarded the spaceship, her strength seemed to be much higher than before. The instrument that originally controlled the air pressure on her wrist was placed on her by herself. Because Yao Beihi's ghost lingered several times, Lin Yunjin was very cautious when handling her. But I didn't expect that I would be so careful. She still has a way to escape. As early as when Yao Beihi and Lily formed a deadly feud, the two sides were already locked in a fight to the death. I thought that just because they had formed a feud, Yao Beihi would never have a chance to take revenge in her life. Lin Yunzhen didn't put Lily in his eyes at first, but this time he didn't die after seeing her again and again. Unavoidably, he became a little scared, clenching his fists, gritting his teeth and staring at Lily. Most of the people around Lin Yunzhen have been with him for many years. Regarding the matter between Yao Beihi and Lin Yunzhen, many people know in their hearts that when Lin Yunzhen and Yao Beihi fell out, outsiders did not know the inside story. After all, Lin Yunzhen took other people's money. The son thought he was his own son and sent him to death. It was not honorable to hide his son afterwards. Therefore, the reason why Yao Beihi turned against Lin Yunzhen in the first place was not clear to the people in the Shenji camp. Lin Yunzhen ordered Yao Beihi to be hunted down. The crime she was charged with was intending to attack his wife Su Shanshan, betraying the Shenji camp, and collaborating with the enemy and the country. In such an extraordinary period, when the enemy was invading, many people had witnessed Yao Beihi's attack on Lin Yunzhen. At that moment, Yao Beihi naturally became a traitor, and later after Yao Beihi was imprisoned. Some people have also wondered whether the reason why Yao Beihi took action against Su Shanshan was out of love and hatred. After all, she and Lin Yunzhen had been ambiguous for several years at the beginning. However, when Lin Yunzhen came to power and Yao Beihi was imprisoned again, naturally no one mentioned it again. But now the pirates of Cross Hall are so arrogant that they dare to break into the planet and directly challenge the fighters of the Shenji battalion. The treasonous Yao Beihi hugged the leader of the Legend of Cross Hall again. Her crime of collaborating with the enemy and treason ends here. Only then was it really confirmed by everyone. Although the suspicions in many people's minds were confirmed, Yao Beihi, who originally liked Lin Yunzhen, now threw herself into the arms of another man in front of Lin Yunzhen. Even if the person who didn't want Yao Beihi was he himself had chosen a delicate girl like Su Shanshan, but seeing this scene still made Lin Yunzhen's face turn pale. You are willing to fall. As a soldier of the empire, you have discredited the Yao family and become a bandit. You have no repentance. But, he quickly took off the mask from Li Yangzi's face and threw it at Lin Yunzhen's face. He subconsciously put on a defensive posture. When the gun hit his wrist that was crossed to block his head, he was shocked again. Falling to the ground, Lily's force was quite strong. Even if Lin Yunzhen had real power to protect his body, his hands were still twitching subconsciously in pain, but his expression was calm and he did not show it. I didn't see Li Yangzi when I returned to the starry sky after 2 missions. Now I finally saw someone. Before I had time to say a few words to him, there was always an annoying person making noises in my ears. Lily snorted coldly. With a cry, he pushed up his long hair that was leaning towards his chest, let go of the hand around Li Yangzi's waist, and kicked Lin Yunzhen's leg without saying a word. The 2 soldiers from the Shenji battalion stood in front of Lin Yunzhen without hesitation, crossing their chests with their hands in a blocking gesture, intending to remove the strength from Lily's single leg. Lily's feet were bare at this moment, but the strength was not much weaker than when she was wearing military boots. When one of her toes covered in grass clippings and dust swept over, the strong wind blew away 2 people wearing camouflage uniforms. The soldiers' cheek muscles twitched involuntarily. The 2 of them did not expect that Lily's kick would be so strong. They were shocked when a soldier's wrist bone that was originally blocking his chest heard a cracking sound, and Lily was castrated. Unabated, the force of this kick directly stepped on his wrist and hit his chest. Several crisp click sounds sounded in succession. The soldier from the Shenji battalion felt as if his chest was struck by lightning. He took 2 steps back in a row. If it weren't for Lin Yunzhen was holding him back, and he might have already fallen to the ground at this time. Even if he didn't fall to the ground, the broken bones should have pierced his stomach. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and his face turned pale. Pale as gold paper. No one expected that Lily would make the first move as soon as she came up. The people from the Shenji camp quickly surrounded them. Lily solved one of them with one kick. As soon as the raised leg landed on the ground, she turned around with this foot as the center. The other leg was raised again. Shenji camper, die, seeing the fate of his companion just now, the other soldier who was blocking Lin Yunzhen looked ferocious. After his companion's block before did not work, he naturally would not block and wait for death, but instead he grabbed Lily's ankles with both hands and was about to snatch her up and smash her to the ground. Lily's body had already floated into the air with this force, and her other leg was placed around his neck. He had originally grabbed her and lifted her up. The other leg was placed on the other side of his neck, and his legs were twisted hard, like scissors. There was a crisp sound in the throat of the soldier who had just shouted, "Death to the camper who hurts the God machine," and his head felt abnormal. The angle was tilted behind his shoulders, and before Lily even hit the ground, his tall body had already fallen to the ground. Death? These losers in the Shenji camp have a good reputation, but they are not very capable. After many years, they have not made any progress. The moment Lily landed on the ground, she couldn't help laughing. People in the Shenji camp saw it. At such a scene, their faces suddenly became livid, and many people showed expressions of grief and anger. They all stared at Lily hatefully. Lily's eyes fell on Lin Ruyun, and she narrowed her eyes slightly. Treason? The Yao family has removed me, and the empire has already sent me to prison. I have a reputation as a traitor, thanks to you. General Lin Yunzhen was pretending to be Yao Beihi's son. After his son was used as bait to lure out the enemy's elite and annihilate them, he was named a 5-tiger general by the empire. In the interstellar era, when the empire's military merits have been accumulated to a certain level, those who have made significant contributions to the empire will be awarded the title of Tiger General. Different contributions will lead to different Tiger General titles. The Galaxy Empire Alliance has historically been awarded the title of 5 Tiger Generals. It's not that there are no such people, but it's really rare for someone as young as Lin Yunzhen to be awarded the title of General of the 5 Tigers. Others didn't understand what Beihi meant when he said general at this time, but Lin Yunzhen knew it. As if he had been slapped hard, his eyes darkened, and with a wave of one hand, several soldiers in camouflage uniforms he stepped forward and dragged down the corpse of the soldier who fell to the ground. The neat photon weapons of the rows of soldiers behind him were now aimed at Lily. Lily bent down and picked up the mask that fell on the ground. A row of laser cannons opened. Lily has been aligned. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 659. She wants to fight you alone, don't you understand? A somewhat lazy and cold tone sounded. Li Yangzi's slender eyes like cold stars narrowed, and the palm that was originally pressed on the rapier at his waist he suddenly tightened his grip, and everyone on the battleship could clearly see his every move, including the careless smile that appeared at the corner of his mouth as he frowned slightly, but even the people in Shenji camp could see his movements clearly. They knew clearly that he would pull out the long sword at his waist, but when they actually heard the sound of the thin sword being unsheathed, no one could react at all. It was as if everyone had a big stone pressed against their chest, as heavy as out of breath. The tip of the sword was pulled out with a beautiful silver light, and was finally picked up by Li Yangzi on the floor. The noise when the metals connected reached everyone's ears. The next moment, the special material used to make the warship was suddenly when he picked it up, the sharp sound of the sword tip scratching on it fell, and a complete plate was instantly divided into dozens of pieces. With the sound of Li Yangzi's long sword being sheathed, these fragments carried a fierce wind. Shoot at the people carrying photon weapons in the Imperial Divine Machine Battalion. Lin Yunzhen's pupils shrank subconsciously. He tried his best to turn his head, but the slap-sized fragment that came like lightning still narrowly cut through the collar around his neck. The corner of his collar originally represented the 5 mini-crystal tigers that held his powerful position were directly knocked away by the fragments, and one of them even flew past his face. Lin Yunzhen felt a sting on his face, and a stream of warm liquid rushed down. Although this special material used to make warship decks is not as hard as steel microcrystals, it is also specially used for the manufacture of military mechas and has extremely high defensive capabilities. At least it has no problem resisting attacks from some infrared weapons. Even when it was first manufactured, it would not be easy to destroy it if modern means were not used to cut it with light energy weapons. But the long sword Li Yangzi held in his hand didn't look outstanding. Even the appearance is so simple that there is no hint of sharpness, but with his movements, he not only picks up the materials easily, but also cuts these boards in the blink of an eye. The interstellar pirate Cross Church is well known. Lin Yunzhen knew how powerful Cross Hall was. He had dealt with people from Cross Hall 10 years ago, but the impression left on him at that time was that Cross Hall had outstanding mechas and was difficult to deal with in large numbers. Lin Yunzhen he had never thought that the people in the Cross Hall could have such martial arts skills. He first felt a murderous intention in his heart. He was known as a genius in the military who only appeared once in 1,000 years. In just a few decades, he had practiced physical skills. The sense of chi has been locked in the body. Someone in the army once predicted that if he was given another 50 years, he would reach the point of being the #1 man in the empire when he was in his prime. But now the leader of the Cross Church actually has such strength that far exceeds his own, and it seems that he is not much older than himself. Since there is a genius like himself in the world, why should others come out? Lin Yunzhen clenched his fists. First, Yao Bei easily strangled 2 soldiers from the Shenji battalion with just a few movements, and then the leader of the Cross Hall appeared again. Lin Yunzhen's thoughts quickly changed, and his cold eyes met Li Yangzi's eyes that seemed to have no emotion at all. Eyes, the murderous intention in his heart faded like a tide, and an inexplicable feeling of terror came up. His body reacted faster than his thoughts. Today, Yao Bei is very skilled, and Cross Hall is coming again. If he wants to rely on it again, manpower fights them. Just asking for trouble. He turned around and quickly ran away into the battleship. The heads of a row of soldiers from the Shenji battalion who were originally carrying photon weapons were nailed to the battleship by neat floor fragments. However, when the surviving soldiers saw Lin Yunzhen entering the battleship, they subconsciously blocked their backs and blocked him. Lily he wanted to step forward and catch Lin Yunzhen. A beam of infrared rays from the battleship swept directly over her, and she quickly got out of the way. This time, the last chance to catch Lin Yunzhen was missed. Bei casually grabbed a soldier from the Shenji battalion. When he wanted to resist, he shook his wrist hard and shook his arm out of its socket, leaving him unable to resist. Only then did his arms wrap around his own neck like a snake. The bones of his arms and neck cracked under the force. The soldier's eyes showed unwillingness and despair, and his body was thrown to the deck by Lily in a weird twisted posture. Superior. Holy shit. It's so shameless to run away after being defeated. When did such a loser appear in the Lin family? A bald man with a bare upper body and a tattoo of a ferocious python on his body couldn't help but cursed. He carried it on his shoulder. He fired a rocket launcher and without hesitation, he blasted it towards the door of the battleship cabin that was quickly closing at this moment. There was a loud bang, and when the shells hit the hatch, the last Shenji battalion soldier rolled in quickly. The shells from the fire sword tube happened to hit the hatch, and were bounced away by the guard of the battleship itself. It lost most of its power and finally left a concave mark. Several corpses next to it that Li Yangzi had just picked up from the floor and nailed to the battleship were affected. The corpses first became red and shiny, and finally turned into ashes and quickly dispersed when the wind blew. Come on. It only took Lin Yunzhen a few seconds from deciding to escape to actually entering the battleship. The battleship quickly launched. Lily looked at Lin Yunzhen's escaping figure and clenched her fists bitterly. Anyway, the days are long. She has escaped now. Lin Yunzhen ran away. She can't escape the first grade of junior high school, but she can't escape the 15th grade. One day, she will personally twist off this man's head. Once the Imperial warships evacuated, the warships that had been floating around quickly surrounded them. They were obviously preparing to start a war. It was no longer a good time to talk on the deck. Li Yangzi pulled Lily and rushed into the mecha, following him. Several people also entered the mecha quickly, and the sound of boom boom was heard from several photon cannons in succession. Although the protective cover had been opened outside the mecha, after receiving these several blows in succession, the transparent protection however, the cover flashed and quickly shattered. The mecha flew into the air. Only 9 people from the cross hall, including Li Yangzi, left just now. The remaining one stayed in the mecha cabin and did not go out. Apparently, while controlling the mecha, Lily only felt vibrations under her feet. It was obvious that the mecha was flying up at an extremely fast speed, and soon began to fight back. Through the steel ceramic glass window, she could see go outside and the sky is filled with flames. Although the Empire has more warships than mechas, in terms of equipment level, warships are far from rivals of mechas. Therefore, after a warship was hit several times, the defense quickly began to collapse, and it was bombarded again. First a large amount of thick smoke emitted from the ship, and then a group of red clouds illuminated the sky, which was very dazzling. The people in the battleship didn't even have time to scream, before they were already reduced to ashes as the battleship descended, burning in the air. Don't be obsessed with fighting. This is the territory of the Empire. Leave first. A young man wearing a simple white shirt and looking elegant glanced at Li Yangzi first. Seeing his cold expression, he couldn't help but pursed his lips and smiled, and gave the order. The mecha that fought back quickly began to change its form, rushed directly into the air, and began to jump and escape at the speed of light. Everyone in the cross hall stared at Lily with curious eyes. In the plot, Yao Lily was no stranger to this group of pirates. These people were fierce and roamed among the stars. Because of their high strength and elusiveness, they were very popular among various countries. There is absolutely no way to deal with them, so the alliance of various countries has acquiesced in the existence of this group of pirates in disguise. People in Christchurch usually do not have the idea of the regular army of the alliance, but if they are privately a small group of soldiers, businessmen, or like the original owner when the elite on the mission encountered Cross Hall, they had no choice but to admit that they were unlucky. When Yao Beihe was captured, she had dealt with these pirates. These people also remembered Yao Beihe who had seduced the leader. At that time, she was wild and beautiful, looking like a fierce female leopard, making men full of conquest. Desire, but in the eyes of everyone in Cross Hall, although she was a little special, she was not worth fearing. When she escaped, it was just because the leader was willing to let her go. In the eyes of a few people, although Yao Beihe had however, if they were willing, they could have 1,000 ways to kill her without using any weapons. But after a few years, Yao Beihe didn't look as fierce as she looked on the outside, but she was much more dangerous. When the leader suddenly asked to rescue such a woman, the other 9 people in Cross Hall had almost forgotten her existence. After more than 10 years in the Interstellar, these people had also encountered beautiful pirates, and even met people like Yao. Lily is a beautiful elite from all over the world. Apart from her having an affair with the leader, this woman has nothing worth remembering for everyone in Cross Hall. She originally thought that the leader was just playing with her, but she didn't expect that almost 10 years later, the boss will demand to rescue her. When it was found out that this woman was imprisoned in the steel microcrystal prison, the people from the cross church held a small seminar, thinking that their purpose might not be successful. After all, what the steel microcrystal prison represents in the interstellar era, no one is unaware of it. Knowing that, just because the leader insisted, the few people who were already lawless came with them. They thought that this trip would be in vain, but they didn't expect that this woman had the ability to blow up the prison and light up the night sky with flames. To be able to escape from a special prison alone, no one has been able to do this in the past 1,000 years. Even many famous thieves in the past, no matter how powerful they were, once they fell into the hands of the empire, they were sentenced to life imprisonment. In fact, she was sentenced to death in disguise, but she was able to break what is known as the strongest place in the world. After the 10th level mecha changed its form, it quickly broke through the siege of the warships. From the beginning of fighting and bombarding the warships, it turned into escaping. The soldiers of the Empire obviously did not expect this change, so they did not react. The man quickly jumped out of the battle circle and created an artificial wormhole, and soon disappeared. This must have been prepared. The battleship was injured on the cheek. At this moment, Lin Yunzhen, who was taking the handkerchief to wipe the blood on his face, saw all this from the monitor with a gloomy expression, and bitterly took the handkerchief away. Throw it to the ground. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan Erwr. Chapter 660. It takes a lot of time to create a wormhole. This thing is perfect for escaping. The cost of making it is extremely high, and even after it is made, many people don't dare to use it. Although this thing is a sharp weapon when escaping, but it is not certain where the wormhole can be used to penetrate the edge. When the artificial wormhole technology was not perfect, the people of Cross Hall dared to use it rashly, and in order to save a woman like Lily, they were simply daring. Lin Yunzhen knew without even thinking that the Empire would definitely become the laughing stock of everyone this time. Most importantly, several soldiers from the Shenji battalion died. It took more than 10 years to train each soldier, but today they were killed or injured. With so much, Lin Yunzhen no longer knows how to report to his superiors after he returns. More importantly, Lily's escape will definitely make his superiors furious. If word spreads, the people will question the imperial army, even if there is someone behind him. The Lin family acted as guarantee, but this time the difficulty was still difficult to overcome. He has worked hard for so many years, giving up his comfortable life and joining the army, just to obtain the rights in the army. He has paid so much, but now because of Lily's escape, everything may be ruined, and his many years of hard work may also be ruined. It turned into nothing, and the remaining soldiers of the Shenji camp were silent at this time. Lily's appearance and quick killing of the soldiers of the Shenji camp shocked them, and also affected his prestige. Lin Yunzhen felt this for the first time. Regret arose. He did not regret that he had abandoned Yao Beihe and chose Su Shanshan, but he regretted that he had not killed Yao Beihe and silenced her as soon as possible, thus leaving behind today's troubles. Yao Beihe escaped from prison and applied to Congress for an arrest warrant and a killing order. Lin Yunzhen quickly put away the hatred in his heart and issued the order. Wherever he fell, he was ready to get up. Since Lily had created so much trouble for him, he wanted to get rid of the source of the trouble. Boss. A piece of information was captured, but it was incomplete. After the wormhole was closed, there were still photon cannons exploding behind it. The mecha quickly accelerated after the shock, and a man's report came from the mecha cabin. Everyone around looked at Li Yangzi subconsciously, but Li Yangzi quickly threw the sword aside and sat down, reaching out to pull Lily into his arms. A message came from the lights worn on the wrists of several cross-hall pirates. After clicking on it, Lin Yunzhen's somewhat cold voice rang out. It was the part where he requested that Lily's escape message be sent out. As for the subsequent request to hunt her down and the order to kill her, the capture was not very accurate due to the distortion of time and space. But everyone didn't need to think about it at this moment, they all guessed that he probably hated Lily deeply. "Brother, what should we do now?" the gentle young man in a white shirt glanced at Li Yangzi. Li Yangzi focused on Lily and frowned when he saw the obviously ill-fitting camouflage uniform she was wearing. "Get out of here first." When the other people in the mecha heard this, they couldn't help but fell silent. The young man who asked the question also twitched his lips. Of course they knew they needed to leave here first, but they just issued a hunt order for Lily for the Alliance. Even if Crosshall was famous among interstellar pirates, it would only be a sneak attack on the Imperial Army. But if the Empire really they are determined to eradicate Crosshall. Even if a few people in Crosshall are extremely powerful, if they want to confront the entire Empire, they are still blocking the road with their hands and feet. I am afraid they are no match for the Alliance. Li Yangzi once again made it clear that he wanted to protect Lily. The next step is to negotiate terms with the Alliance or become an enemy. He always had to come up with an idea so that everyone would know what to do, but seeing that Li Yangzi's mind was obviously not on this matter at the moment, the young man in white could only smile. He sat back in his seat. Lily had many things to ask Li Yangzi at this moment, but because there were other people around, she wanted to ask Li Yangzi. She had no choice but to suppress her thoughts, holding Li Yangzi's hand without making a sound, and the mecha quickly flew out of the wormhole. Except for Lily and Li Yangzi, the other people in the cabin couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. After determining the coordinates, the mecha began to rush towards the headquarters of Cross Hall, leaving the Empire's military sphere of influence. The mecha no longer concealed its whereabouts. After about 2 days, the group finally returned to a safe location. In Yao Beihi's memory, this was the place she tried every possible means to escape from. Unexpectedly, in the end, something went wrong. The empire she considered safe and willing to devote her life to became her nightmare, and she died in the end. Got there. Although the people from Cross Hall only had a brief encounter with people from the empire during their trip, they were still in low spirits. Now they returned to their own territory. After greeting Li Yangzi, they all returned to their rooms. Go, Li Yangzi took Lily back to his residence. The door had just closed, and before Lily could ask why he was here, she was pulled into Li Yangzi's arms. The soft lips first touched her eyebrows, and finally slid down the bridge of her nose. When they landed on her lips, Li Yangzi paused for a moment, and then the force gradually began to increase. Wait, why are you here? The temperature between the lips was like a straight line, and it seemed that the friction could produce sparks. Lily felt that Li Yangzi's hand that originally held her fingers began to exert slight force. This kind of dangerous the feeling made her instinctively want to hide, so she tried her best to turn her face sideways and lower her head. When she ducked away, Li Yangzi's lips slid across the side of her face, and finally stopped on her eyelids. He didn't make a sound, just kissed her gently. The eyelashes licked her eyelids, and the warm breath blew on her face. This feeling was both familiar and unfamiliar, too close. Lily was about to struggle uncomfortably, but she twisted their bodies against each other. Suddenly, Li Yangzi's eyes darkened, and he picked her up with Lily's hands. Lily was forced to put her arms behind her back, and when her legs rose into the air, she was suppressed by him before she could struggle. On the big bed, a pair of long legs were forced to spread and cling to his waist. You can't wear other people's clothes. Li Yangzi endured it all the way. If it hadn't been for the fact that there were no extra clothes on the mecha, he would have wanted to tear off Lily's eye-catching camouflage uniform that others had worn. At this moment, returning to his own territory and encountering such an opportunity, he tore off Lily's camouflage uniform with a righteous expression. "Ah!" Lily exclaimed, but her hands were pressed behind her body and couldn't be freed at all. At this moment, both hands were caught in his palms, and she could only stare at Li Yangzi with a red face. In the past, Yao Beihe was a female prisoner imprisoned for life for treason. Naturally, she had no privacy or self-esteem. When she was imprisoned, she did not wear any underwear or other intimate clothing, only a set of prison clothes. Beihe escaped. At that time, he directly killed the soldiers of the Shenji battalion and snatched the camouflage uniform. At this moment, except for a coat, there was nothing under the clothes. Once it was torn open, the graceful scenery wrapped in the clothes could be seen at a glance. She was trying her best to stay calm at the moment, her long hair was spread all over the bed, and a blush appeared on her cheeks. She was not as coquettish and wild as the original owner with an aggressive beauty, but was calm and self-possessed, but at this moment she tried her best to pretend to be calm, but her eyelashes were trembling slightly like butterflies, which was far more lethal than any enchanting beauty. Li Yangzi's body was pressed against hers again, and his hands gently moved up from her waist. Lily's toes couldn't help but curl up wherever her fingertips passed. She wanted to make Li Yangzi stop and ask him why he was here. Since she left the starry sky before and disappeared after leaving only a note. Instead, she appeared during the mission. However, she had no chance to ask questions at this moment. Li Yangzi seemed to be like a violent storm, quickly sweeping her in. She struggled, but Li Yangzi did not give her a chance to escape and locked her firmly in his arms. The soft breathing in the room stopped, but the heat did not stop. Lily's cheeks were as red as fire, her whole body seemed to be as soft as water, her bones seemed to fall apart, and she didn't even want to move her fingers. Her eyes were still misty and moist, her lips were open and she was breathing rapidly. Seeing this scene, Li Yangzi lowered his head and rubbed her lips again. His satin-like straight black hair, as good as that of a woman, hung down and fell on her smooth neck and shoulders. Lily raised her head and let him kiss her softly. He sucked and entwined his tongue until their lips were both full. After touching each other's breath, Lily reached out and pushed him, heavy. She was a little shy and scared about the intimacy between the two before, but she liked his intimate kiss after the tenderness, because it made her feel Li Yangzi's like and care. It's not like he just wanted to tear her apart and swallow her whole body and skin into his belly. That feeling made her instinctively want to escape. "Do you miss me?" Li Yangzi moved away from her body, no longer pressing her, but stretched out his arms to pull her into his arms and press her tightly against his body. She was covered with sweat that was not completely dry. Her body temperature seemed a bit cold at this time. Li Yangzi stretched out her free hand to wrap the shirt she had torn off before and wrapped it around her body. Lily gritted her teeth, feeling a little annoyed in her heart. This was the result every time he entered the mission. Just now she originally wanted him to stop, but he didn't even give her a chance to speak. Although it was not the first time that the two of them had been intimate, and it was already over, Lily felt a little angry when she thought about it, and he remained silent. He disappeared for a long time. I didn't see him when I returned to the starry sky on 2 missions. After I saw him in the mission, he didn't even mention why he disappeared. Now I asked myself if I missed him. Seeing that Lily was paying no attention to him, Li Yangzi showed a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. He still looked elegant and indifferent, but his eyebrows and eyes were a little more domineering. When he glanced at people casually, it would make people feel guilty. Feeling a little shocked, he kissed the corner of Lily's mouth, and his pupils reflected Lily's messy hair and reddish cheeks. Speak. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 661. I don't want to say it, the two of them were very close. Lily saw herself in his eyes and subconsciously reached out to cover his eyes. Li Yangzi laughed softly and gently slid his fingers over her face, breathing warmly. Pounced on her face, he could still clearly see her image in his mind without using his eyes, but what he saw was not Yao Beihi's body, but her original appearance in his heart. Remember the Yun Munan you met during the last mission? Li Yangzi let her cover his eyes and trapped her in his arms with both hands. When Lily heard this, she was stunned. Li Yangzi now when mentioning Yun Munan, she should be talking about business. Yun Munan certainly remembers that she has entered so many missions. Like the time in Yun Munan's mission, the original owner was eaten alive by the carp demon. There are still only a few. Ruthless Lily had seen such people during missions, but there were only a few people as ruthless as Yun Munan who would kill the persistent carp demon at the drop of a hat, so she naturally remembered it in her heart. She nodded slightly, hesitated, took back the hand covering Li Yangzi's eyes, pushed him away, sat up, took the shirt he had wrapped around her body and put it on. Remember, this time you does his disappearance have anything to do with him? Li Yangzi looked lazily and quietly as she fastened the buttons with her fingers. The shirt he originally wore had a complicated style, with double rows of gemstone buttons on the collar. It was beautiful, but it was troublesome to button it up. She buttoned 2 of them. Li Yangzi was a little impatient, so she simply grabbed the hem of her clothes with both hands and stared at him with eyes. Li Yangzi looked at her slightly frowning brows, raised the corners of her mouth, and sat up straight, buttoning up the buttons for her. This time, Lily did not refuse his help. She quickly let go of her hand holding the skirt of her clothes. Li Yangzi fastened the buttons for her, and finally kissed her forehead. Remember he King Han? This time he didn't answer Lily's question. Instead, he asked another question. He asked several questions in succession, and mentioned he King Han. Lily frowned and nodded. She remembered he King Han. He King Han died to save her during the mission, but no one remembered him after his death, and his body was strangely missing. When she returned to the starry sky, she asked Li Yangzi and knew that he King Han was there to protect him. Lily finally eliminated the sadness in her heart about he King Han's death, such a person. Of course she remembered. Isn't that you? Where is Ye Changjin? Li Yangzi asked again. Lily was a little unhappy this time. Li Yangzi. Her appearance made Li Yangzi couldn't help showing the slight smile lines on his lips, and kissed the corner of her mouth. Lily was a little embarrassed by his trouble, and pushed him, and Li Yangzi's mood gradually faded away. You met Ye Changjin, he almost left you in the mission world. You met him again in subsequent missions. Lily didn't know that all this was related to her asking why he appeared here, but she still clicked. He nodded and was about to ask him why, when Li Yangzi continued. When you met him, ask me for help. During that mission, Tang An's personality changed. Although the Tang An that Lily met in that mission had completely different names and appearances from Ye Changjin, those 2 different people are the same person. When Tang An scared Lily that time, Lily asked Li Yangzi for help. After he promised, Tang An's temperament changed drastically from then on, and he no longer gave her the sense of crisis that Tang An did before. At the same time, Li Yangzi in the starry sky also disappeared from that time. Lily was startled, and Li Yangzi touched her hair. I was restricted by the law at that time. I couldn't enter the mission, and because of Ye Changjin's special characteristics. So the way I agreed to help you was to enter Tang An's body and fuse Ye Changjin, Lily said vaguely. She had also suspected this. The time when Li Yangzi disappeared after agreeing to help her was too coincidental. In addition, Tang An's change was obvious, but she couldn't believe that Li Yangzi would help her like this. Lily felt that it was like that. As if putting gold on her face, she pursed her lips and said nothing. Only by merging Ye Changjin can I control him. Because of this, I was restricted by the law and could not return to the starry sky. Although the mission world was created by Li Yangzi, his strength at that time after being divided and newly sealed, he woke up soon. When he sensed the 7 emotions of his being divided and sealed, he used his remaining strength to create a different world. In order not to arouse the vigilance of the elders, he chose to use the weak soul body is like his own eyes, and he puts it into the task world to help him find these other sealed selves. When meeting Ye Changjin, Li Yangzi's strength had not recovered much, and Kicking had developed his own independent personality. It was not easy for him to take it back. When Lily asked him for help, it was probably due to the mutual influence of the other self. Li Yangzi couldn't bear to reject her, and even among a group of so-called mission workers, he had a special liking for Lily, as if there was a plate of identical buns in front of him, but he only liked one of them the most. I admired Lily's knowledge of affairs, which led me to give her extra preferential treatment and keep her in mind. Therefore, when Lily entered the task, the other selves also had a vague impression of Lily. In the end, Ye Jinjin began to have a crush on Lily. She was entangled endlessly, and Ye Changjin's liking also indirectly affected Li Yangzi's feelings for Lily, and finally entered the mission in order to help her. He couldn't completely conquer Ye Changjin at that time. The most he could do was suppress him. Ye Changjin's obsession prevented him from returning to the starry sky. Except in the end, when Ye Changjin himself found out that Lily was hiding from him and he couldn't get Lily, he took the initiative to give up your obsession and return to your true nature. After listening to Li Yangzi's explanation, Lily couldn't help but feel a little complicated. Her scalp was numb when she thought of Ye Changjin's persistence. When she thought of Li Yangzi's willingness to enter the mission for herself, and even reincarnated several times in the mission, she felt a little confused. The taste of not being able to come out. Then your disappearance this time has anything to do with Yun Munan. Li Yangzi saw the moving expression in her eyes, a dark light flashed in his eyes, and then his expression turned cold. It is related, but at that time, because of suppressing and finally absorbing Ye Changjin, I suffered it had some influence. Lily nodded. In the past, Li Yangzi seemed to be independent from the dust, and his high position seemed out of reach. But when he returned to the starry sky, Li Yangzi had obviously changed. He seemed to have walked down from the clouds. Lily was a little surprised at that time, but now she understood and realized that he must have been influenced by Ye Jinjin. Lily was speechless for a moment. She vaguely felt that she had caused him trouble and she should apologize, but she also felt that something was wrong. So I know you are not used to me touching you, but I have been restraining myself. Li Yangzi looked serious. Lily did not expect that he would turn the topic here. Although she barely showed a calm expression, at this moment, her hands were involuntarily clenched into fists and placed at her side. Although her expression was calm, her ears felt faintly hot again. She saw Li Yangzi looking like he was waiting for her answer. Lily thought about what Ye Changjin's strong force had brought to her before. Li Yangzi undoubtedly made her relax a lot under her pressure. If he really absorbed Ye Changjin and was influenced by Ye Changjin's character, he could restrain himself and not do anything that made her want to hide. Come on, then he is indeed very good to himself. Lily lowered her head and said nothing, feeling a little guilty, but she quickly regained consciousness. What does all this have to do with your appearance in this mission? It doesn't have much to do with it. What Li Yangzi said just now was just to make her stop resisting him for his own sake in the future. Unexpectedly, she reacted very quickly this time. Now this girl is getting harder and harder to deceive. Li Yangzi thought of her increased intelligence and suddenly felt like he had shot himself. Although he was a little disappointed in his heart that he did not get Lily's personal understanding of why he could touch her at any time in the future, Li Yangzi nodded calmly on the surface. Of course it does matter, but I will tell you the reason why we leave this mission in the future. He just listened to a lot of words that were beneficial to him, and now he postponed the key things to later. Lily was a little depressed, but she didn't want him to mention the fact that he absorbed Ye Jinjin in order to help her, so he suppressed the urge to vomit blood and nodded reluctantly. What are you going to do about this mission now? After talking about his own affairs, Li Yangzi finally asked about the mission this time. When it came to the mission, Lily couldn't care less about being depressed, and a serious look appeared on her face. On her way back, she listened to the analysis from people at Cross Church. First of all, if she wanted to deal with Lin Yunzhen and bring down the Shenji camp, she had to face one problem, and that was the Lin family. The Lin family has a prominent status in the Alliance Empire, and the Lin family is equivalent to a behemoth hiding behind Lin Yunzhen. The Lin family's influence in the alliance is deeply entangled. In general, dealing with Lin Yunzhen and the Shenji camp is equivalent to fighting against the empire. To do it right, and to do it against the empire, then she had to be prepared. Just relying on the power of Cross Church, if you want to go against the entire Alliance Empire openly, you will undoubtedly be seeking death. The suggestion put forward by the second master of Cross Church is to seek peace with the empire, and Cross Church will do some shady things for the empire in the future. And from now on, some materials of the empire can no longer be plundered as wantonly as before. In this way of surrender, the empire will no longer deal with Cross Church. The two sides are enemies in the open, but peacefully coexist in private. Not to mention that Li Yangzi would not bow to this request, even Lily would not agree to it at all. Her purpose was to kill the son of Lin Yunzhen and Su Shanshan, let the couple taste the pain of losing their son, and then bring them together with the Shenji camp and destroy. To get her to surrender would mean that her mission would fail. If the mission was to fail, she wouldn't have had to work so hard to escape from the prison, which would lead to so many troubles later. To be continued.